Hey, it's Sam here from Sugar Spun Run, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make these gingerbread sandwich cookies. So this recipe is sort of like an oatmeal cream pie, kind of. There's no oats. We have a gingery spiced, very soft and chewy cookie, and instead of a marshmallow cream, I'm going to be doing a white chocolate buttercream filling. It's amazing, but really you can do any kind of filling you'd like. Cream cheese, classic buttercream, or marshmallow frosting would all really work well here. So we're going to start by making the sandwich portion of this cookie, and what you need for that is 3/4 cup or 170 grams of softened unsalted butter. I'm going to drop that in a large mixing bowl, and we are going to add a 1/2 cup each of granulated sugar and firmly packed dark brown sugar. So that's 100 grams of granulated and 100 grams of the dark. Now, today's recipe could absolutely be made in a stand mixer. Use your paddle attachment if you have one, but today I'm just going to be using my electric hand mixer. We're going to beat these together until they are light and creamy, well combined. So I'm going to scrape the sides and the bottom of the bowl real quickly just so you can see how we're looking. Everything's nicely combined and creamy. Okay, so next ingredient we need is 1/4 cup or 60 milliliters of molasses. You'll want to be using an unsulphured molasses. It should say that on the bottle. Don't use something like a blackstrap molasses, which is much too bitter. It's not going to give you the flavor that you want here. Pour that in. We're gonna make sure we get that all in there. Oh, all of it. Didn't mean the measuring cup. And we'll be adding some vanilla extract. You'll need 3/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract today. Thought I wasn't gonna be able to get that open on camera. That would have been embarrassing. And I also like to add my spices here as well to get them really incorporated in with the butter and to help give us a really nice spiced flavor. We start with 2½ teaspoons of ground ginger, 3/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves. Okay, and also we're going to be using an 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. This does add some heat to it. I really like it. It is a classic like ginger snap flavor. It works really well, especially with the sweeter creamy frosting. You could leave it out if you can't handle any heat, but this doesn't make them like super spicy. Like my 2-year-old eats these sandwich cookies no problem. I know not everyone uses cayenne pepper in their desserts, so it might seem a little unusual, but I do encourage you to trust me on this. It's a nice kind of spice. All right, we're going to beat everything together. We are also going to add 1 large egg. Ideally, this should be room temperature. I'm gonna grab my sugar dish for this. We'll go ahead and add this in. And once again, you'll want to use your spatula to scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl. It's good practice anytime you're mixing something. And if the mixture looks like it's like slightly separated, that's pretty normal. It's the molasses doing that. Don't worry, everything will come together when we add our dry ingredients. Speaking of which, you're going to need a medium-sized bowl for your dry ingredients. To this, you'll add 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. And then we have 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and 3/4 teaspoon salt. Gotta make sure that's not the one I used for my vanilla. Of course, we'll whisk everything together. You always want to make sure you whisk your dry ingredients together while your leavening agents get nicely incorporated. And we will gradually stir these into our dry ingredients. Get my spatula out of here. And I just do this with my mixer on low speed until I get everything nicely combined. The rest of it. And we'll do another scrape. Get any of the flour or dry ingredients left behind, make sure that gets incorporated. All right, now one thing you're going to notice about this dough is that it's a pretty soft dough. So we cannot use it right away. At least I don't recommend using it right away. We're going to cover the dough and chill it for, I'm gonna say at least 30 minutes, but I actually prefer to work with it if it's chilled overnight. It'll work after 30 minutes though, and I'm going to pull this back out after 30 minutes and you'll see just how it is. Another plus of letting it chill overnight is the flavors do develop a little bit more, so you get a more flavorful cookie. 30 minutes helps with that too. All right, I'm gonna put this away. I will preheat my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 175 degrees Celsius. I'll do that when I'm about ready to start baking them. Okay, so 30 minutes later or longer, we can start scooping out our cookie dough. Your oven should be preheated to 350 or 175 Celsius, and you do want to measure yourself out some granulated sugar to roll the cookie dough through. I like to use a coarse sugar. So turbinado sugar, I don't love for this recipe, but a lot of stores sell organic cane sugar, and that is coarser than your classic granulated sugar. It really looks pretty and sparkly on the cookies, whereas regular granulated sugar just kind of disappears into the cookie. Either way, you're going to want to use granulated sugar, but I really like this coarser version. So let's uncover the dough. We're going to scoop level 1½ tablespoon-sized scoops, so 27 grams. and roll them between your palms to make them nice and smooth. If it's too sticky to roll through your palms, just pop them back in the fridge for a little bit longer. Roll them through your granulated sugar, and then you'll space the cookie dough balls at least 2 inches apart on the baking sheet. That way they don't run into each other. These are going to bake into a nice flat cookie. A lot of times when they first come out of the oven, they look a little bit puffed, but I don't ever need to flatten them myself. They just settle down as they cool. If for any reason yours are not settling down, you may have accidentally used too much flour. I'm trying to think of other things that could cause it, but flour is the big one, which is why I really do always recommend using a kitchen scale. All right, these are going to go into the center rack of our 350 Fahrenheit / 175 Celsius preheated oven. They're going to need to bake for about 10 minutes. Now, when they come out of the oven, they should look slightly underdone. If the edges are turning golden brown, that's a good sign that they're actually a little bit overdone, and then they're not super soft and chewy when you bite into them. So it's okay if they look like they need a little bit more time, but they don't really. So with these cookies, you do want to let them cool completely on the baking sheet. They're going to be very fragile and delicate when they're warm, so I don't recommend moving them. We're going to bake the rest of our cookie dough, and while the cookies are cooling, I like to prepare our frosting. So this buttercream frosting, I want to give you a couple of notes about it, because sometimes I hear white chocolate and I'm like, oh, it's a little too sweet for me. My white chocolate buttercream is also what I use in my macarons, specifically because it's a frosting that actually is not too sweet. This complements the gingerbread flavor really well. It's just a really nice pairing. So it's my recommendation, but feel free to swap out a different frosting if you'd like. Most of the recipes on my website, you would want to make a half batch of the frosting, and that should give you enough. Do you think you should trust me on this and try the white chocolate buttercream at least once? It is less sweet than classic buttercream. So to start, you're going to need 3 ounces of chocolate. I'm really sorry, my cat's going crazy. You'll need 3 ounces of chocolate. Chocolate chips would work, but my preference is a baking bar. So I'm going to chop this up nice and small since I am using a baking bar. And then I'm going to melt this. Saucy gets really unruly when there are chipmunks outside. And I love chipmunks, so she is not going outside for a while. All right, I'm going to put this in a microwave safe bowl. If you don't use the microwave, you could melt this over a double boiler instead. And this is 85 grams of white chocolate if you don't use ounces. Break up a couple pieces a little smaller. So this is just going to do some brief stints in the microwave. I'm going to heat it in like 15-second intervals, stirring well in between until it's completely smooth and melted. Do not try to heat your chocolate all at once, or what's going to happen is it's going to seize, it'll look grainy, it will not be usable, and you'll have to start over. Don't be mad at me if that happens, because I warned you. All right, so after your chocolate has been melted, you need to let it cool. This usually happens pretty quickly. Especially if you stir it periodically, but you don't want it to feel warm to the touch. Like if you touch the bottom of the bowl, it should feel room temperature. If it's warm, it's going to melt your butter and things will be greasy and messy. So just make sure you have a little patience with this. Mine is almost cool, so I'm going to start making the filling. You need 1/2 cup, 1 stick, or 113 grams of unsalted butter, or you could use salted butter here and just don't add any salt later on. And I'm going to beat this until it's smooth and creamy. If I didn't already mention this, the butter is softened to room temperature. All right, now if you are using a stand mixer, you will turn your mixer onto low speed and gradually add the chocolate into it, but it's a little harder for me to do that one-handed, especially since my mixer is so powerful. So I'm going to add all of the white chocolate now. Again, super important that your chocolate not be too warm, but also that your butter not be too cold. Particularly cold butter can cause the chocolate to re-solidify a bit, then you'll have a lumpy frosting, and chocolate that's too warm, as we already discussed, will melt it. Will melt the butter. Stir this together. It's creamy and well combined. Now we're going to stir in a cup of powdered sugar, and I'm just going to do this like half at a time because this bowl is small and I don't want to end up wearing any of the sugar. I'll do the rest. All right, and I do want to add a little bit more flavor to this. So we are going to add just a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. You don't need a whole bunch. You don't want the filling to be too rich, but a 1/4 teaspoon adds a nice touch. And because we used unsalted butter, we're going to add a pinch of salt. And that really is, it's like less than an 1/8 teaspoon of salt. Just gonna pinch it, do like a scant 1/8 teaspoon or 1/16 teaspoon. Never seen one of those teaspoons, but you could use half of your 1/8. Stir everything together. All right, quick scrape of the bowl. Everything looks good. Let me grab the cookies and let's assemble everything. All right, so once your cookies have cooled completely, I can't stress that enough, completely, you can go ahead and pare them off. So We're going to be making cute little sandwiches out of them. Then we're going to fill them with our buttercream. You could pipe this in if you want. I like to use a tablespoon-sized cookie scoop, and I just do a level tablespoon. This is 14 grams. Now, when you first put it in, it's not going to seem like a ton, but I have found this is just the right amount. So if you overfill it, let me show you how it looks first. Squish that down. So you can see it, but it's not like a really thick layer. This is the perfect amount and is what tastes the best and what my taste testers agreed. If you overfill it, it's just not as enjoyable of a cookie eating experience, but please feel free to do what you prefer. Let's go ahead and fill another one. Also, if you do fill it more, you'll probably need a little bit more filling. That's a respectable amount of frosting. Also, if you put more in, you bite into the cookie and it just kind of like squishes out and can be messy. All right, I'm not gonna make you watch me fill the rest of them, but they're so good. I think they are going to be a favorite in my Christmas cookie tray this year. I really cannot wait for you to try them. If you do, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. I really do always like hearing from you. Make sure you check out some of my other favorite Christmas cookies, like my sugar cookies, my chocolate Christmas cookies I just shared, or my gingerbread men. I think you'll love all of those just as much. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. I love these cookies. Not to pat myself on the back. This is perfect. Like flavor balance, so good. My 4-year-old eats them too. Saucy, I'm working here. Hey Luke, right sauce? Don't you backtalk me.